Please tell me that I can't, that I won't, that I fail, that I'll never make it out, yeah. Please tell me all the bad, never good, fill my head full of every single doubt, yeah.
Alright, let's talk about technique over numbers. This is a video that, before I show it, I want to make sure that you understand that I'm not at all judging this young girl. She's lifting a lot of weight and she needs to get the proper amount of praise for accomplishing that lift. However, there are some areas where she can improve. So as you can see in that video, when she was getting set up, she was in a perfect position. Her back was nice and flat. She looked like she was in a strong position. Her knees were somewhat caved in, which I would rather have her make sure that she's driving those knees out wide, so that way she can activate the glute medius to get more power in the lift, especially when she's starting it by lifting the plates up off the ground. But when she starts lifting the barbell off the ground, you notice her back goes from being nice and flat and straight in a super strong position. As the weight starts coming up, you can see the back starting to bend. There are elite lifters, strongman competition lifters or elite power lifters. All the time you see them have a curved back, which is totally okay if you start with a curved back before you even begin the lift. So if you're going to have a curved back, before you even lift the barbell off the ground, you should already have that curved back, and the amount of curve on the back really shouldn't change during the lift until, of course, once you're at the top, it doesn't really make that much of a difference. But in the lifting portion, you want to make sure that the amount of bend, whether it's flat or slightly curved, has to be maintained. The reason I say that, especially with the deadlift, is because of the way the back is formed. So the structure of the back, the vertebrae, it's divided into segments of bones. So it's got bone segments stacked up on top of each other. In between each bone segment is a disc. When that disc is pinched in either when you're bending side to side or forward or back, under load, this creates an uneven amount of pressure, which over time, it can actually cause that disc to move either direction, and that's what creates a herniated disc. So to prevent a herniated disc to happen, you have to make sure that when you're lifting whatever type of load, especially a heavy load, you want to make sure that you're not creating that uneven pressure on those intervertebral discs. And if this young girl was to continue lifting with the same poor technique that she was observing in this video, that could eventually lead to a herniated disc. Herniated disc is called a chronic injury. So whenever you hear about chronic injuries, it's not something that happens overnight. It's something that takes a good amount of time for it to develop. A couple facts about injuries is that they're not always 100% avoidable. So even if a person is observing perfect technique, there is still a possibility that that person can suffer an injury. The great thing about observing good technique is that, one, it reduces the intensity of an injury, and two, it speeds up the amount of time it takes to recover from said injury. With a person that just doesn't observe good technique at all, the intensity is going to be greater, more than likely, and it's going to take longer for that injury to heal up. Another unfortunate fact about injuries is that it slows down progress, which it can really be very testing to a person that has been making good amount of gains, or a person that has just started their fitness journey, whether they're just a recreational lifter or someone who is looking to compete in a competition. Rehabilitation exercises must take precedence when injuries happen. So you have to do some really lightweight, body weight exercises, and use this time to your advantage by observing your technique. So take this time to make sure that you correct whatever imperfections you had prior to the injury in your technique, So that way, once the injury completely heals and you go back up to full intensity, you'll be able to avoid re-injuring yourself or reducing the possibility of re-injuring yourself. And I get it, rehabilitation is not fun. It decreases the joy about training because you're no longer able to stack up as many plates as you used to, and you're not breaking as much of a sweat. You're looking at everyone else in the gym that's lifting heavy, or you're looking on his social media of all these people lifting heavy. Well, you're probably just with a naked barbell or using a PVC pipe, but that's okay. Not everybody can progress their strength or their weight loss on a linear scale. It's just a little bump in the road. Just stick with the program and you'll get to where you want to get to. A couple things that affect the rehabilitation is the severity of the injury and how old a person is. So yeah, if you're over 35, you're not going to heal up as quickly as you did when you're in your teens or in your early 20s. Also, if it was something you tore a tendon or you tore a bicep, that's going to take a good amount of months, maybe up to a year, as opposed to like a broken bone, which could just take 6 weeks to heal up. Again, that depends on how old the person is. Again, someone just 22 years old, they're going to heal up a lot faster than somebody who's 42 years old, especially someone who's 52 or 62 years old. So how does technique affect performance? With great technique comes improved efficiency. So if you're observing horrible technique, your body is not going to be able to maximize the amount of leverage that it could. So that's why you want to make sure that you really focus on great technique, especially when you're in the early stages of your training. So you want to make sure that your movements are fluid and natural and that you can maximize the leverage. So in the future, you will be able to hit the great numbers that you have the potential of hitting in the future, again, in the future. So I want to go back to the young girl in the beginning. Got to give huge props to her. Lifting 225 pounds is awesome, especially for someone who's just 15 years old. But there is always room for improvement. I mean, I still have room for improvement. I'm not going to state that everything that I do in the gym is absolutely perfect, and that one of the reasons why I always film myself when I'm lifting is to take a look back at how I'm lifting the weight. Is my technique making me lose potential power, or am I putting myself at risk of suffering an injury? I want to make sure that I can spot those errors, so that way I'm not going to be screwing myself over in the future.